Welcome to the new video. I have a small scar on directly above my right eyebrow. It's not noticeable anymore, but when I was younger, people always asked me about it. I was inspired to write this when I told the story to my girlfriend, and she pointed out something strange with how I remember it. As a kid, I had a series of dreams, experiences from when I was 6 to about 8 years old. I would get in bed, and sometime after midnight I would wake up. I remember it being strange because I didn't wake up for a specific reason, I was just awake. After a few minutes, a bright white light would appear outside. It wasn't like daylight or artificial light, it was a brighter, pure white light. It didn't hurt my eyes, I could look right into it. I think this was one of the reasons I always assumed it was a dream. I never moved in these experiences either, I would just sit under my covers and watch. After the light came a shadow, moving towards my window. It would stand there for a moment completely motionless, casting a strange silhouette on my wall. After this, it would push its hands against my window. The glass would seem to vanish as the being slipped into my room. It would always stand in the corner next to my bookshelf. It had a tall, thin body, having to crane its neck forward as it stood in my corner watching me. Its body had no discernible joints, making it move and appear like it was made of wire. Its movements were slow and deliberate, almost stiff. After a while, I would just fall back asleep. I remember I was never really scared of them. They didn't do anything scary, and they almost felt familiar. I think as a kid, I just assumed this was a normal thing, and since I was never hurt or startled in any way, it came off as mundane or uninteresting, the same as if my dad were to open my door and check on me while I was playing. The last time I was ever visited, everything happened like normal. Not that any of this could be considered normal, but I remember feeling scared as the being approached. He looked more sinister than usual. Looming over me, the face of this being. They had very large round eyes that almost protruded from their head. The eyes were a pure glowing white dotted with tiny black specks, almost like a cue ball. The rest of the face was all mouth. In lieu of teeth, they had a large forest of baleen, appearing as a gaping maw with millions of hair teeth. The general shape and layout of the face was similar to an owl. I should point out that no noise was ever made during these experiences. It made no sounds as it walked, and the room was silent in general. Tonight was different. Have you ever heard that bugle sound that elks make? We see them up here during rut, and it's a very interesting sound. Imagine that, but slightly smoother, shifting between all different tones in a rhythmic pattern. This was the sound the creature made. But it wasn't loud, it was as if the sound were fake or played from a speaker right next to my head. I couldn't feel the sound, if that makes sense, like I imagined it or something. Without coming closer, the being extended a large branch-like arm. The arm made it 3/4 across the room, and the rest of that distance was covered when it unfurled the long fingers of its previously clenched fist. The index finger, the longest of what was possibly 10 to 12 fingers, slowly came closer to my face. On the tip, I could see balanced what looked like a small iridescent piece of glass, rainbow light shimmering across its surface. I remember it reminding me of my mother's engagement ring. I couldn't move out of fear as the rest of the fingers gently gripped my face. They felt light and airy, as if they were barely there. It felt more like a force than a physical touch. The finger with the glass pressed onto my forehead softly, and I remember a burning pain. I can't recall if I had winced in pain at the time, but remembering it now, I cringe thinking about it. There was no blood. I remember touching the spot after and it feeling hot and tender like a burn. The bugle still droned on through this process, and I began to almost understand it. Suddenly I could hear the words and the tones, but they didn't make sense. There were hundreds of words, and as a small child I couldn't understand any of them. Ezoic, suppuration, ichor, irrevocable, derelict, forswear, reverie are a few I remember. There was no series, just single words, hundreds of them. Then, like nothing had happened, the being left. My parents didn't believe my story about the small scar. They told me it was a dream and I was hesitant to believe them. It became a fear of mine to see them again. Over time, however, I dismissed it as a dream and mostly forgot about this incident. Until I was about 14 and I learned about sleep paralysis and the strange visions people have. That was it for me. I had my explanation and it satisfied me for years. I recently told this story to my girlfriend and she pointed out that in these sleep paralysis dreams the figures never usually do anything. They usually stay still or hold you down, but they don't touch you like that. I found this information alarming and decided to post my story here while I search for answers and related experiences.